poll question today. Does a 40-goal season make Brock Boeser untouchable? Yes, no, or he's untouchable now. You can vote at Carson Price on Twitter and YouTube. Here he is, Wednesday regular, former Vancouver Canuck, TSN hockey analyst, the one and only Frank Corrado. How we doing?
Good. It was it's been a busy week, but we're gearing up for some things. I don't know if you guys care about European hockey at all. I'm going to give a little shameless promo. We got the Champions Hockey League starting up next week on TSN.
Yes. I've seen this on TSN in previous years.
Are you familiar with the rule changes that they implemented this year?
No, do tell.
So there's 3 new rule changes. So if your team gets a penalty, it's going to be treated as a major. So you're sitting in the box for the 2 minutes no matter what, even if the other team scores.
Right. Yes, I remember when it was announced. Keep going.
If your team is shorthanded and you score a shorthanded goal, your player now comes out of the box, which I love. I happen to love that rule. And the third one, I believe, is if there's a delayed penalty and someone scores, you're still going to the box, even though it's a delayed penalty.
Right.
What do you think?
I like them all except for the shorthanded gets your guy out. The infraction happened. If you want to dissuade those infractions from happening, you keep the guy in the box. But either the other two, the delayed penalty one, that's a tap in. That should have been done years ago.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
Is HC Davos in this tournament?
They are not. They'll be front and center for the Spengler Cup in December.
As per usual.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Boeser here for a second. We talked about him last week. You go back with him, right? Canucks. No,
I played against him. He lit us up for 3 one night when I played for Pittsburgh. We thought this guy was the next coming of Ovechkin. We couldn't believe it. We were sitting on the bench. We got Crosby and Malkin, and Brock Boeser, the rookie, is lighting us up for 3.
Right.
Yeah.
As Matt Murray said, though, it was a lucky night. Lucky night.
It was a lucky 3. I wish I had a lucky 3. I think I had a lucky 3 in my whole career. So,
Boeser with 2 goals last night. He's up to 17. That's the league lead. 2 better than Kucherov and Reinhart. What do you think, Frankie? Is he back to being in the Canucks score, untouchable? I mean, let's remember this was a guy who spent the second half of last season seeking a trade, and there were no takers for the contract.
The untouchable label is weird for me because I remember when Luke Schenn in Toronto was untouchable. Everyone could get moved except for Luke Schenn. So I don't know if I buy the untouchable thing, but I will say this. If a team is heading in the right direction and thinks they have a chance to win and they have a player filling the back of the net and he's contributing and you're getting your dollar's worth out of that guy, why would he not be in your core group of players going ahead moving forward? Because with the way the team has played this year, and the standings don't really lie, I believe they're 1 point back of Vegas today. That's a good team, and that's a team that is we know exactly what direction they're going in. So it's kind of like all hands on deck. Everyone who's kind of involved with this group now, outside of maybe there might be a few guys down the road that might get moved for one reason or another. Like we saw a cap casualty in Beauvillier, and there could be moves like that. But when you're leading the league in goals, you're not going to be a cap casualty. The team needs you. And good for Brock Boeser, because I think we talked about it this summer where it's been a long road. It's been tough for him. And he obviously put in the work here, and he's come back with a certain mindset, playing with a lot of purpose. And he's kind of right back to where he should have been as one of the league's best goal scorers.
Well, and it's funny, Frankie, because as we know, he is not fleet of foot. He is not going to score a lot of goals based on speed or off the rush. There were several years there where he just didn't seem to be able to even manufacture the space in the offensive zone to get that terrific shot off of his. And so, you watch him this year and he's going right down to the blue paint and he's scoring goals there on rebounds. He's been an incredible screener this year. He's done an excellent job of getting in the goaltender's kitchen. So I think deserves a lot of praise for the way he has found his role, found his niche, adapted to his strengths and weaknesses here.
You know what? Season. Sometimes scoring goals from distance sometimes is just not going to be available to you. And you need to put yourself in situations where you're going to be in and around the goal mouth area in order to put things in. Obviously done a good job of that. I would say that there's probably a little more emphasis this year than there has been in the past as far as making those plays happen around the goal mouth area. You watch the team in the past, it was it just felt like things never really filtered there as much as they should have before. It feels like there's way more of an emphasis now, and that's obviously working out in his favor. So give him a lot of credit for that. I think the team mindset and the mentality and how they want to play offensively is something to do with that. But listen, he's got a great shot. He's gifted that way. He's not the most fleet of foot player, but if you can arrive at the right spots at the right time, which it seems like he's doing, you're more often than not, you're going to get rewarded for it. So it also helps to play on a line that's clicking really well.
Call this a good problem to have. And we say that about general managers, but it is a problem ultimately. And it's not one to be dealt with in season, but Brock Boeser, if he becomes a leading scorer in the league, now, it doesn't have to be the Rocket Richard Trophy, but if he's in the top 5 in goals, and if he comes anywhere close to that next season in his final year of his contract, there's dollars there that have to be paid. Guys, Philip Hronek is a point per game defenseman right now. They've got to find money for him. They've already got to deal with Hughes and Pettersson in the not too distant future either. These are some problems, Frank. Not everybody can make $10 million on your roster, but point per game defenseman, that's what they make. Yeah. Leading goal scorers in the league, that's what they make. There is an issue. And again, it's not an issue right now. It's not an issue for even May of this year. But not long after that, there is an issue here to be dealt with here. And the team that you cover the most is the Leafs. They know all about this. You just can't pay everybody $10 million a year.
It's very true. And you know what? We see this a lot with teams that have won, all the cap casualties, all the guys that, had great playoff runs and had great seasons, and they were under cost certainty, and now they're not anymore. The unfortunate part for Vancouver is if and when this does come to a head, they didn't have the years of everyone winning, where, Tampa Bay had the years of winning. So the guys like Killorn and Coleman and Barclay Goodrow, like those guys all moved on. They all got paid elsewhere. But
with
you
rings,
can live with it.
Right, yeah.
You can live with it because you won. The Chicago Blackhawks are a great example of that. Every year, guys left because they made more money elsewhere. They tried to replenish until you get to the point where the core just got too old and they couldn't do it anymore. Now, I will say, so many things change on a day-to-day in this league. 2 weeks ago, there were 2 teams in the Western Conference that had no chance of making the playoffs, Calgary and Edmonton. I don't know about Edmonton, but you know what I mean? Things change so quick on a day-to-day in this league. So things are obviously going to change here as the years go on and these contracts do come to a head. But it's better to have this problem with players that are succeeding and doing well within your own organization rather than going out and acquiring and then inheriting bad contracts that other teams sign and now you've taken on because you think your team can be good. I don't know. They're in a better situation now than they have been in the past, even with, a lot of money to be paid for a few guys coming up on the horizon.
And worst case scenario, I suppose, Frank, if you have to make a hard decision on a player going forward because they are so successful, that player should have a lot of asset value for you to trade away if you're forced into that particular position. So you should be able to reap some benefits.
You would think. And another guy we talked about this summer was Connor Garland, right? There had to be some kind of cap move. So Beauvillier was the cap move, but even Connor Garland, anyone who's having success on a team, now teams look at you a little different. If they just look at you as, I got to take on this problem, I'm not giving up an asset to take on someone's problem to let them off the hook. But if I see Boeser's having a resurgence this year, I don't know. They probably couldn't get people to pick up the phone on Boeser last year. I'm not certain, but maybe that's the case. This year, I bet there's a lot of teams that would want a Brock Boeser. So the individual performance dictates a lot of that.
On the trade that you alluded to, I mean, everybody here thinks it's a slam dunk because you clear $4+ million in cap space and get a draft pick asset. I mean, I suppose so much of it depends on how they spend this cap space. And then the other part is they've got some wingers who are struggling already, and he has played some better games here of late. I'm not sure he changes the stakes over the long term, but perhaps in the immediate term. What did you make of the Beauvillier to Chicago trade?
Yeah, I think, well, it's good because you can get rid of the whole cap hit and you bring back an asset, like you said. I don't know. It just seems like every year we see that the biggest weapon GMs can have is cap space. We saw the Seattle Kraken when they came into the league. They really emphasized cap space, and they've kind of used that to their advantage. Although they're not having a great season this year, I think last year was a good example of what you can do when you have cap space. There's been other deals, the last couple of years where you can see, like, it was the Erik Karlsson deal where cap space was the number one priority. It wasn't really about picks. It wasn't really about prospects. It was like, we need to get as much cap space as humanly possible going forward. So yeah, good for them in that regard. If I'm them, I'm looking to spend it on a defenseman. And I think that's got to be the number one priority. You keep hearing, oh, Canucks are interested in Tanev or Zadorov, and maybe Ethan Bear is maybe sniffing around, getting ready to come back and play. I mean, for me, like, they're pretty good down the middle. Like, they've been good down the middle. They do have some wingers that maybe underachieve, but I don't know. Like, you kind of see what the recipe is for teams to have success. Last year, Vegas, they were really, really good in their own zone. LA is really good in their own zone. They don't give up much. It's nice to have guys that fill the back of the net. It's nice to have guys who get a lot of points, and it's awesome in the regular season. Blake, like you mentioned, I watch Toronto a lot. I cover a lot of their games. I see that. I see, individual players up front that have fantastic years. And when push comes to shove, it leaves a little to be desired, defensively in front of their own net. Like, the Canucks have situated themselves in a really interesting position because not a lot of people thought they were going to be this good coming into the season. And I'm not going to say they've overachieved because they probably had high expectations internally, but they've done a great job. They've done everything that they can kind of control here and on their end. So now you look at it and say, why don't we bolster things a little bit more? Because I don't know, we're almost playing with house money here with where we're at in the standings. And like I said, like, the league changes very quickly on a week-to-week, year-to-year basis. You don't know your players' health in the future. You've put yourself in a good spot here. Why not bolster things and really try and solidify your blue line?
I think they thought they would be 12 to 15 games above 500 at season's end. I just don't think they thought they would be this close to that this early. So I think they're ahead of schedule more than they're necessarily better than they are right now, and that's good for them as well. We've talked about the fact they're playing big games now, and that's fun. A big one versus the Vegas Golden Knights coming up on Thursday as well. They've met some regression. They've sort of staved it off here. They're 3-2 now in their last 5 games. So they're starting to get back above that 500 mark in recent history. It's fun to have games circled on the weekly here now, Frank. On the weekly, We're circling games going, that's a big one. In fact, the next 2 this week, Vegas and Calgary, it's pretty fun.
And it changes so quick where now teams are seeing Vancouver on the schedule, and they're probably saying, that team's playing well. Like, that's a good team. So now they're getting the attention of the other teams instead of Vancouver sitting in there and Vegas rolling through town and thinking, how are we going to tread water here? Because these guys are 4 lines deep, they're 6D, and they can roll over us and embarrass us here on home ice. I think it's different now. A good team like Vegas looks at Vancouver and says, these guys are on the up and up, and they're a good team, and now we need to be sharp. Like, looking ahead to that Vegas game, they haven't been exactly filling the back of the net, but they're a team, like, I've watched them play a few times this year. They just kind of have the recipe, like they just understand what a game entails as far as how to manage it, how to win it. I know I believe they lost to Calgary. They lost to Edmonton. So they're going to be hungry. That's the thing about these good teams. They're not going to lose too many in a row. They're not going to let things slide. They kind of understand how to manage that. So that's going to be a good test for the Canucks. And that's a team that's probably looking to break out a little more offensively, although they scored some goals last night. But they'll be hungry to take a piece out of Vancouver. And if anything, kind of assert themselves, over Vancouver in the division and say, like, we've been here. Like, we've been here a little while now. You guys are on the up and up. You're having a great season, but we've been doing this year after year, and we won the Stanley Cup last year. Like, welcome to our party. We've been here for a little while now.
Elias Pettersson, his first goal in 6 on Tuesday. He's got 2 in 10, and we're all, sitting here going, is he hurt? Is he injured? Coach mentioned a few weeks back that he's playing through a little something. What have you noticed about Pettersson here of late?
Yeah, so everyone's kind of speculating, what could it be? And the coach mentions he's playing through a little bit of something. It's hard to know if it's the wrist or not, but I watched, watching last night, and I see he's in like a one-on-one battle. And instead of like moving his feet really quickly to like get out of the battle, you almost see him position his body so he can like pick someone and then have someone else come in and win the battle. And I'm thinking, man, you could really explode out of the gate there. You're definitely fast enough. You're definitely strong enough, but you're almost just shimmying your body in a way to get body positioning on someone. So I don't know. That's just like a small little subtle thing I picked up on. And I don't know like what body part that would be. But give him credit because he's obviously working through something and he's still got to contribute. You know, that's the nature of being a player in the NHL and playing through something. Like no one really cares if you're hurt, if you're on the ice, you have to be able to play. I remember, when I played in Vancouver, there was a game against the Minnesota Wild. I can't remember if I told you guys this story, but I tore my oblique and I knew there was something wrong and it was sharp pain. And I didn't really, not that I didn't report it. I just said, I'm playing with a lot of pain right now. Something hurts, but I'm not leaving the game. I want to finish the game. And obviously didn't go well the rest of the night with a blinding pain in your side. But the next day there was a clip in video where I got beat on an icing and I'm watching the video clip and I'm kind of getting like called out for it by Willie. And he's like, this is unacceptable. This can't happen. This is in front of the whole team. And I'm thinking, yeah, like I kind of put myself in that spot, didn't I? Like I could have obviously pulled myself from the game, but I had to be a hero and play through a torn oblique. So no one really cares. Like the moral of the story is no one cares if you're hurt. You still have to contribute. So good for him. He finds a way to score a goal. And if you can manage yourself, like I would always say this, take the practice days off, take the morning skates off, just be ready for the game. And it's not ideal, but it is a long season. And, hopefully he can make progress that way.
So, Frank, would people notice he's wearing wrist tape on his wrist? Like, that's not a smoking gun.
I don't think so. No. A lot of guys tape their own wrists. If you see the wrist tape, okay, and it's, let me get it in. If it's like from here to here, and then it goes around, the thumb.
Like a physio taping job. Yes.
Yeah, like if you see that, that's a legit tape job. Like that's like there's something going on. A little bit of tape right here on the wrist. I've done that myself where I'm like, I just kind of want a little more stability. It could be, but I don't think that's not the smoking gun that it's like, oh, it has to be the wrist. I know guys that hurt their wrist, 2-3 years prior, and they just felt comfortable with the tape. So they just kept doing it. Unless it looks like a real physio job with, the whole shebang, the pre-wrap and everything, I'm kind of thinking, I don't know. Anyone could tape their wrist like that. We're obviously speculating because we don't know, but that's
I had the same thought though. Yeah,
that's just my experience.
Lastly, you do such a fantastic job for us in terms of explaining the X's and O's of hockey, which has been evident already in this hit. But Tocchet wants Kuzmenko, quote, driving the middle through the neutral zone.
Mm-hmm.
What's he talking about there? What's he needing more of from Kuzmenko?
I think that's just like a way of saying, I need you to move your feet. You're kind of gliding through the neutral zone. And Tocchet always talks about like pushing the pace. He says like we need guys to push the pace a lot. That's where that happens. You push the pace through the neutral zone. I think it's one of those things where if he can pick up some speed and accelerate through the neutral zone, especially like in the middle of the ice, that'll allow him to arrive on time a little bit more in the offensive zone. So, if it leads to the forecheck, because I kind of think Kuzmenko, he can be a really good puck hound at times. But if he's not getting to the right spots to do that on time, if you're a half a second late, you can't even hound the puck because now the defenseman or whoever's breaking the puck out, they got positioning on you, so you're chasing it. Just think it might be one of those things where he's chasing it a little too much. And that's his way of saying, like, get in gear and get moving. And of course, you always want to stay through the middle of the ice because that's where the game needs to be played. But I don't know. That's how I read that. It's just like, let's get your feet moving and get involved in the play a little bit more. I'll tell you what, he's not doing himself any favors, or he's not doing favors to anyone who had elaborate plans of training in Bali for the foreseeable future. With the starts of the season that he's had. And that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate for NHL players who had plans to go, in exotic locations and, drink their protein shakes out of coconuts. And, I think it might be one of those things where the guys who are paying $15,000 to go train with other NHL players and, the best professionals in the business, They might be onto something.
They may have an edge over
They might be
Bali,
onto
is what
something.
you're saying.
Before you go, the last two games.
Well, let me just follow up on that. Like, does it get to the point where other guys in the room resent him for it?
I
Or
don't.
Does it get to the point where other guys in the room, like someone pulls them aside and says, hey, about that Bali last summer?
What's happened has happened, I would say. Like, no, what are you going to do now? It's happened. But maybe it's one of those things where if it really got bad, which I don't think it's terribly bad. Like, I know Tocchet last night said what did he say? He was okay or he was fine?
Yeah, he said he
okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
It was very faint.
they both mean the same thing. Okay. So if you looked at like Money Puck after the game, you would have saw Kuzmenko was above 90% in his, expected goal share. So if you looked at that, you would think, man, that guy had an incredible night. But it just goes to show you where the eye test kind of meets an old school guy like Tocchet, where he's like, he's mentioned like speed through the neutral zone. I've kind of mentioned like I want to see this guy hound pucks a little bit more because it leads to a little more for him. So I don't think it's a resentment thing from teammates, but it might be one of those things where it's like, if it really got bad, someone tells him like, we need you, man. Like we got a good team. We got an opportunity to do something really cool here that's somewhat unexpected. We're going to need all hands on deck. So I'd imagine he's, like he seems like a hardworking kid. Like he seems like he's got a good head on his shoulders. So I would imagine he's doing everything he can to help contribute in the best possible way.
Before you go, the last two games alone have provided numerous examples. McCabe has to leave because of being hit by his own shot. Miller, Boeser, the friendly fire.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
well, Kuzmenko in the mouth.
Is there anything you can do to mitigate this? I mean, you don't want guys not going to those areas because the screens are so important in today. And yet I can't remember this many friendly fire injuries here for the Vancouver Canucks. And maybe it's relying on outside shots too much. Maybe that's the issue at play here. But my goodness, hit the net, not your friends if you can.
You know what you need to do? You need to get like a couple mannequins and put some skates on the bottom of the mannequins and tie a string and just like have the goalie coach or the skills coach maneuver them around the front of the net and have guys take shots from all different areas and just practice not hitting your buddy in front of the net. I've seen it a lot, actually. Like I did a video clip of Hronek and Hughes, and I think there was two Canucks players who got hit. And for like one was DiGiuseppe, he got hit in front of the net. You see it a lot. And I think it's a good thing because that means there's someone establishing their presence in front of the net. It's great. But it might be one of those things where before practice, hey, we're going on with the goalie coach. We're going to do goalie ice. We're going to do some skill ice. And we got the mannequins. Like teams have the mannequins. They exist. So get the mannequins out there and just try not to hit them.
Remember, Sammy Salo said he was scared at times of using his shot because he didn't want to hurt his teammates.
He demurred from time to time.
Was so like heavy shot.
Oh,
my
so
goodness.
Good.
You would see, remember that play he used to do on the 5-on-3s where he would almost go out to the red line and take a running start and like Henrik or Daniel or whoever would just put it on a tee for him. My goodness. I wish we had the shot metrics on that.
The San Jose Sharks remember that shot.
Oh, do they ever? Single-handedly won Game 4 of the Western Conference Final in 2011. Well, lots of Sharks penalties played into that as well. And the big hammer slap shot from Sammy Salo. Just one last thing by way of clarification, Corrado. Okay and fine might mean the same thing coming from a hockey coach to a hockey player. In my household, okay and fine.
Okay is better. Okay is better.
Yeah. There's one that's better.
If she's okay, that's not great.
Yeah.
But that's livable.
But fine.
If she's fine, that's a 4-letter effort.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah, you don't want to hear that.
No. When things are fine at home, it's kind of like the word literally, which is now used for exactly the opposite of its intended meaning. Yeah. Fine is absolutely on that list.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
That was how I described my game some nights. It was fine.
It was fine.
Your hit today here, this interview, way better than fine. Way above
several levels.
Thank you, sir.
Fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
This Sick Harrison Price clip brought to you by Applewood Auto Group. And remember,
it's all good at Applewood.